Before I call on Ms. Polisan, I want to also welcome back Mr. Faisal Manap and Mr. Liang Enghua back to our chambers. Ms. Polisan.
Question 32. Sorry, question 33.
You're right, question 33. My apologies.
Mr. Speaker, may I have your permission to answer PQs 33 to 52 on today's order paper?
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, my response will also cover related questions raised by members who are scheduled for further sittings. I would invite members to seek clarifications if need be. If their questions have been addressed, it may not be necessary for them to proceed with these questions for future sittings. Mr. Speaker, when the Kinderland at Woodlands Mart incident first surfaced on social media, like many members of the public, parents, and preschool educators, I was shocked and alarmed. The videos were painful to watch. This incident and the others at the Kinderland centers should not have happened. Our children deserve to grow up, learn, play in a safe and nurturing environment, and our 1,900 preschools and 24,000 strong team of preschool educators are committed to providing this safe and conducive environment day in and day out. What we saw is not reflective of the wider preschool sector. Many preschool educators have expressed shock and dismay. They have been dedicating their time and energies in caring and nurturing for our children, putting the children's well-being as their top priority. To prevent such incidents from happening, ACDA will work closely with the preschool sector to strengthen our system of multi-layered safeguards, which has been built up over the years. As a sector regulator, ACDA sets out clear policies and requirements that establish the baseline for a safe and positive learning environment in our preschools. There are explicit provisions in the Early Childhood Development Centres ECDC Act and regulations which make clear what actions educators cannot subject children to. And this includes force feeding, corporal punishment, example, striking a child or any other form of aggressive contact, neglecting the child, and causing psychological trauma. These are prohibited actions. ACDA has also issued a code of practice to further detail what preschools have to do to meet these requirements, while stipulating that educators' interactions with children must be respectful, responsive, and reciprocal to support our children's learning and development. Educators must also use positive and developmentally appropriate methods to manage and communicate with children. ACDA will take action against operators and educators found to have breached any of these requirements, whether in the Act, regulations, or code of practice. For educators, ACDA can issue warnings or bar them from working in the sector. For serious cases where there may be criminal wrongdoing, the case will be reported to the police for investigation and the individual may be prosecuted in court. For operators, ACDA can impose financial penalties, shorten the preschool's license tenure, and in the worst case, revoke its license. ACDA recognizes that it cannot work alone to safeguard children's safety in preschools. Our system of multi-layered safeguards requires operators, centers, and educators to also do their part. Our regulations thus make clear the obligations of operators, centers, and educators in discharging their duty of care for children. All operators are required by our regulations to put in place standard operating procedures and appropriate policies within their centers to maintain a safe environment for our children. They must also ensure that these policies are implemented effectively and consistently by all their centers and staff. centers are responsible for complying with the policies and SOPs their operator has put in place to ensure child safety. Center leaders need to ensure that all staff are aware of these rules. This is done during orientation and induction training with further emphasis at regular staff meetings. They are also expected to carry out regular observations of staff-child interactions and provide timely feedback to the educators on their management of children, as well as intervene when necessary. All educators must be certified by and registered with ACDA before they can be deployed in our preschools. ACDA verifies their professional qualifications and conducts background checks. If their educators assessed to pose a risk to children's safety, they will not be allowed to be deployed. This includes those with previous criminal offences involving children, as well as former educators whom ACDA has earlier barred from working in the preschool sector. ACDA also requires individuals seeking employment in the sector to declare if they have a history of mental illness, and if so declared, the individual must obtain a certification from a psychiatrist that he or she is suitable to work with young children. Like other jurisdictions and many other professions, we do not impose mandatory psychological screening. We also ensure that our educators are well trained and equipped to work effectively with young children. The training curriculum for educators strongly emphasizes the educator's responsibility to ensure child safety and equips them with a range of classroom management strategies to work effectively with young children. They learn about children's developmental milestones and how to interact positively with them to meet their needs and support their holistic development. The training also lays out what educators must not do, such as corporal punishment and inappropriate child management practices. They are taught that such actions are an offence under the ECDC Act and regulations. They are also made aware that they can be liable under other laws such as the Children and Young Persons Act. Moving forward, ACDA will work with the National Institute of Early Childhood Development, NIEC, and other training providers to strengthen training programs so that all educators are clear of their duty and obligations to ensure child safety. Apart from expanding coverage of positive child management strategies, training materials will be more explicit in what constitute inappropriate and prohibited methods. This will help our educators be better equipped to call out child mismanagement practices in their preschool. As part of its enforcement approach, ACDA conducts regular, unannounced visits to preschools to check on their compliance with regulatory requirements. During such visits, officers observe the educators' classroom management practices and their interactions with children, as well as assess whether the children appear well adjusted and that the physical environment is safe. ACDA also checks that the centre has implemented policies and SOPs to ensure child safety and briefed their staff accordingly. Unannounced visits to preschools are conducted on average once a year. More frequent, unannounced visits and checks are conducted for preschools that require close monitoring due to a higher incidence of feedback or incidents. Where non-compliance or breaches are identified, follow-on checks are conducted to ensure that these are rectified. As part of our system of multi-layered safeguards, there are clear rules on the requirements for incident reporting. As several members have pointed out, this includes reporting by educators who witness child mismanagement in their centres. The ECDC Act and regulations impose a duty on all educators and preschool staff to report child mismanagement or abuse to ACDA. So, for example, if a child is abused at home and observed in a centre to be unusually withdrawn or displaying abrupt behavioural changes, the educator must report this to the authorities. Likewise, if a child is abused or mismanaged in the preschool, the educator is required to report it. Signs of child abuse and the obligation to report to ACDA are covered in the training curriculum for all educators. At the same time, ACDA's Code of Practice requires operators to implement a policy for internal reporting of wrongdoing. When an incident affecting the health and safety of children or involving alleged child mismanagement by any staff occurs, the operator must notify ACDA within 24 hours, and educators can also report directly to ACDA. There are multiple reporting channels. Preschools are required to set up their own internal reporting mechanism at both the center level and the operator level, and there is also a direct reporting mechanism to ACDA via its hotline, email, or website. And apart from reports from operators, ACDA also receives reports directly from educators. ACDA will continue to reinforce awareness of reporting obligations and channels among the educators. It will also get operators to improve and clarify with all their staff what they need to do if they witness any wrongdoing and how to use the various reporting channels. Some members have asked about the use of personal mobile devices by staff in relation to collecting evidence of wrongdoing. I wish to emphasize that any operator's policy on use of personal mobile devices at work should not hinder their staff from reporting any wrongdoing in their centers. If so, this is a clear breach of the operator's duty to implement an effective reporting mechanism, and ACDA will take action against the operator. Some members have asked about the installation of closed-circuit television CCTV cameras in preschools. ACDA has announced that the installation of CCTV cameras will be made mandatory in all preschools from 1st of July 2024. Members may wish to refer to ACDA's 31st of August 2023 media release for more information. ACDA did not come to this decision lightly or in reaction to the recent spate of incidents. Since 2022, ACDA has been engaging the sector, and in February 2023, it shared with preschools its plan to mandate CCTV cameras. Ms. Hazel Phua asked if the deadline to install CCTVs could be brought forward. We fully recognize that some parents may be worried and want the CCTV cameras in place earlier. I fully understand that. However, it is also important for us to note that we have to give the preschools time needed to procure and install the CCTVs correctly, so that the CCTVs are installed in the appropriate venues and the necessary protocols are in place to ensure the privacy of children and staff, even as we leverage on CCTV footages to improve security. ACDA has provided the sector with a set of guidelines to facilitate implementation, and we encourage centres who can achieve the CCTV mandate earlier to do so. So please install CCTVs earlier if you can. To Mr. Louis Chua's question on ACDA's tracking of preschools with CCTVs, I wish to clarify that ACDA does not track this, as CCTV cameras are currently not mandated, and it would be unfair for us to track something which is not stipulated. In our earlier engagements, ACDA conducted a one-off survey last year to seek centres' views on the CCTV mandate, which included the question on whether they have CCTVs. Ultimately, operators need to foster a strong safety culture where all staff always feel empowered to report to their principal and HQ management team when they see inappropriate practices in their preschools. Ms. Mariam Jaafar and Associate Professor Razwana asked about the frequency of child mismanagement incidents. There are about 10 substantiated cases per 100,000 enrolled children each year, and this figure has remained low and stable over recent years. But of course, every case is one too many. And when an incident of child mismanagement happens, ACDA takes it seriously and will take appropriate action. ACDA has established protocols that ensure that every report received, regardless of whether there are visible injuries or not, is promptly followed up on. At the same time, There is a due process in any investigation, and time will be needed to ensure that the investigation is thorough, robust, and objective. For the Kinderland at Woodlands Mart case, investigations by ACDA commenced the day after the video footages were received. There was thus no delay in the commencement of investigations. Members can refer to ACDA's 4th of September 2023 media release on the investigation outcomes and subsequent follow-ups. While the Kinderland at Woodlands Mart case was followed up promptly, ACDA has acknowledged and apologized for a lapse where the educator ought to have been removed from classroom duties sooner given the clear evidence and severity of the educator's actions. We will learn from this case. ACDA is reviewing its procedures to strengthen this protocol and ensure better oversight of cases under investigation. Ms. Tin Pei Ling asked about the adequacy of the regulatory actions for the Kinderland case. When determining the appropriate penalties, ACDA takes into account all the facts of the case and imposes a penalty that's proportionate to the circumstances. When considering what action to take against errant educators, ACDA can impose administrative actions like warnings or stern reminders coupled with a requirement to undergo retraining. This is what it did for some of the educators in the recent Kinderland case. If an educator commits a serious act of mismanagement, ACDA can bar the person from working in the preschool sector, as per one of the educators in the Kinderland at Woodlands Mart case. This educator has also been charged in court. For operators that fail to adopt reasonably practicable measures to ensure that their centres and staff comply with the applicable regulations, ACDA may impose financial penalties, shorten the centre's license tenure, or revoke its license. For Kinderland at Woodlands Mart, the operator was fined $5,000, and this is the maximum permitted under current laws. They have also had its centre's license tenure reduced to 6 months. The shortened license will impact the centre's operations as it will influence parents' decision to enroll their child at the centre in the coming year. ACDA has also withdrawn the centre's SPARC certification. Mr. Speaker, sir, colleagues, the current regulatory framework came into effect only in 2019. With the experience gained in operationalizing this regulatory framework, ACDA intends to strengthen the framework and review the provisions to see if penalties imposed on operators for child mismanagement should be enhanced, including whether financial penalties should be raised. As I have said at the beginning, the incidents at Kinderland should not have happened and are not representative of the vast majority of preschool educators. They have worked tirelessly to care for our children and provide them with a safe space to play, to learn, to grow. I'm grateful that members such as Mr. Melvin Yong have acknowledged that most educators are exemplary and that we ought to boost their morale as they have been affected by the recent incidents. These are educators who, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, showed up every day for work at our preschools. They provided an essential service to our frontliners and essential workers who in turn kept Singapore going because they knew their children were in the good hands of our educators. I'm glad to see that parents share this sentiment as well over the past few weeks, both online and in forum letters. I agree with Ms. Victoria Soen Mini, a parent who wrote to the Straits Times, which was published on the 8th of September 2023, we should not forget about the rest of the teachers who have been doing their job well. There are many passionate, wonderful teachers in our midst. We should not let the errant acts of a few tarnish the good work of the whole. ACDA is doing their part to improve the career proposition and working conditions of preschool educators. In October 2022, ACDA announced efforts to uplift salaries of educators to be market competitive and commensurate with their growing competencies. We do so because we recognize and take pride in the improvements in the training and professionalism of our 24,000-strong workforce over the years, and we want to retain the good quality educators that we have and attract more to join. We have worked with government-funded operators to implement the increase in salaries this year and will continue to do so in 2024. ACDA also provides resources for educators to take charge of their professional development, deepen their expertise, and plan for career advancement. Some members are concerned that the workload is heavy and contributes to stress on educators, which can lead to adverse incidents. I thank members for your concern. ACDA has been taking steps to improve working conditions. One major shift we announced in July this year was the removal of the requirement for childcare centres to operate on Saturdays. This is to enable educators to have better work-life balance and sufficient rest to recharge. This will take place from the 1st of January 2025. More moves are also being planned, such as ACDA's review of preschools' practices on non-contact time. This is to provide educators respite during working hours to refresh and complete non-teaching tasks. The outcome of the review will be shared with the sector soon. We will need the support of parents to operationalize these improvements in work conditions for the sector. Teachers who are cared for can better care for our children. At the same time, operators must also do their part and take the lead in supporting the well-being of their employees. We encourage educators who may feel overwhelmed to have open communication with their centre leaders or management on their work commitments and well-being. To help operators support their employees, ACDA has launched a good practices guide to guide them in implementing best workplace and human resources practices to foster a supportive work environment and support the well-being of their staff. ACDA also works with the Health Promotion Board and the Workplace Safety and Health Council to offer programs to operators and educators to support their overall well-being. Mr. Speaker, I have met many teachers who have devoted their time and energies to raising our children with love and putting their well-being as a top priority. I fully understand that it is not easy to care for young children, but it is our teachers' passion and commitment that spurs them to stay the course. Our children's well-being is at the heart of what they do every day. The recent spate of incidents of child mismanagement are not a reflection of the state of the preschool sector and educators. In our continuous efforts to ensure the safety of our children and support their growth and development in a positive and nurturing environment, we will learn from recent incidents to strengthen our system of preventing child mismanagement cases. First, ACDA will strengthen its investigation protocol to ensure better oversight of cases under investigation. Second, we will enhance our regulatory framework, which includes a review of the penalty provisions for errant operators. Third, we will work with NIEC and training providers to strengthen educator training in both prohibited and positive child management strategies so that educators are better equipped to ensure child safety. We have a system of multi-layered safeguards. Let us work together to strengthen it. ACDA, operators, preschools, educators, and parents to provide a safe and nurturing environment for our children to learn and thrive. Thank you.
There are 26 PQs filed on this matter by 18 members, so I will give priority to the 18 members who have filed PQs. But can I request all members to keep your supplementary questions short, and likewise for MOS Sun Xueling to keep your answers short. Ms. Polisan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank MOS Sun for the comprehensive clarification. On behalf of concerned and affected parents, I have two SQs. Firstly, CCTVs are useful as a deterrent and for investigation, but they will not be foolproof to prevent child abuse. First question, will ACDA and preschool operators implement programs to build trust in parents and stronger rapport with teachers. Also, will ACTA provide guidance to parents to detect signs of unusual behavior in their children that may indicate child mismanagement or abuse, and also to update them the reporting channels? The second question pertains to preschool teachers facing a heavy workload to teach, prepare lesson plans, and reports. Many centres are also short of staff and they face a heavier workload caring for special needs children. Will ACTA introduce a timeout system for teachers who are facing burnout or mental health issues without being penalised? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her questions. As I have mentioned in my main response, we have a system of multi-layered safeguards. We're not singularly relying on the installation of CCTVs in order to ensure the safety of our children. I have mentioned in my main reply the obligations of operators, of centres, centre leaders, as well as educators. Our educators also undergo training, pre-service and in-service, to know what are prohibited actions and also what are appropriate child management strategies. I note the point that the member has made with regards to the feedback loop with parents. Currently, different centres are employing different digital solutions in order to have an efficient and effective feedback loop with parents. Recently, I visited a preschool under Babilo, and they showed me how they have used digital solutions such as a software to monitor their engagements with parents, that feedback with parents, so as to build trust in parents towards their preschool educators. On the point about no contact time, I have mentioned in my main response that ACTA is reviewing this area so that we ensure that our preschool educators have sufficient rest, that they are able to make use of this no contact time to achieve a better work-life balance, and also for them to engage in other activities that will help them in their teaching requirements. Thank you.
Ms. Joan Pereira.
Thank you, Speaker. MOS, I have one clarification. I would like to, one supplementary question. I would like to find out what is the Ministry's view on requiring the installation of audio recorders instead of CCTV cameras to cover blind spots in preschools such as bathrooms and changing rooms so as to detect and even deter crime, deter cases of mistreatment. Thank you.
I thank the member for her question, and I fully understand that where you're coming from is to make sure that we do what we can to ensure child safety. But at the same time, I would like to caution against excessive use of digital devices to monitor the ongoings in schools. We are already taking a first step with CCTV installations, and we'll be very careful in how we install, where we install the CCTVs. For instance, we'll put them in places where the children regularly engage with their teachers, in classrooms, at very important access areas, and we will steer clear of our private areas such as the toilets, rest areas, because we also have to ensure that the privacy of the children and staff are taken care of. There are many parents who feel strongly about this as well. I would like to say that rather than for us to think whether is it better to have a CCTV camera, whether is it better to have an audio recorder, so on and so forth, that what is important is that we must inculcate from top to bottom, operators, center leaders at the centers to the educators, this entire concept around child safety, that they live and breathe child safety, that they know what practicing child safety means, that they know how to recognize signs of abuse. So I would rather that we spend time educating our teachers, be it pre-service or in-service, rather than overly rely on digital means to monitor actions. Some parents may feel and some teachers may feel that having audio recorders in the toilet may be an invasion of privacy. So I'd just like to share that this is the thinking, but we will monitor with the installations of TVs, how the responses of educators and parents are, and we will be fully committed to ensuring that we provide a safe and nurturing environment for our students as well as our teachers. Thank you.
Mr. Louis Chua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just two supplementary questions for MOS. The first is when exactly did ACTA decide to mandate the installation of CCTVs in preschools? And second, does ACTA know of which preschools have or do not have CCTVs installed? And I think for context, the reason why I'm asking is because in July, in response to my PQ, it was shared that CCTVs are not mandatory, yet in the 31st August ACTA response and as shared by MOS, this is something which is planned since last year. And secondly, I think Minister also shared then that ACTA does not track CCTV installations, yet I think in ACTA's release, it's also said that more than 60% of preschools already have them installed. Thank you.
I thank the member for his question. ACTA has been engaging preschools on the issue of CCTV installation. I mentioned in my reply that they started engaging preschools last year. There was a one-off survey whereby the schools were asked to indicate whether they have CCTVs installed. But there is a difference between conducting a one-off survey to understand where the sector is at that point in time, as opposed to tracking and monitoring. As I have said in my main response, CCTV installation was not a mandated policy before. And therefore, it would be unfair for us to run after centres to ask them, have you installed? And then the follow-on question from that would seem to be, if you have not installed, then does it mean that it's a bad thing? So we do not track and monitor the pace as well as which preschools have installed, because this was not a mandated policy before. But now that we have announced that it will be mandatory, we will be working with operators moving forward after the installation deadline to ensure that they comply. Thank you.
Ms. Hazel Poa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the MOS for answering my question about the CCTV deadline. I understand that the operators will need some time to install the CCTV, but in this case, the time frame that is given to them of close to 1 year appears to me a bit excessive. Can the MOS explain why is it not possible for them to install the CCTV in a time frame of closer to like 3 to 4 months? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her clarification, her question. As I have mentioned, we announced the deadline for the installation of CCTV to be the 1st of July next year. Currently, already 60% of preschool operators have CCTV, and it's almost 100% for EI centres. What we want to do when we announce a policy and something that's mandatory is that we must ensure that operators on the ground are fully equipped to be able to do it appropriately and properly. As I have mentioned in my main response, operators will need time to procure the CCTVs. They will need time to identify where are the appropriate places to install the CCTVs. To this end, ACTA has actually issued a set of guidelines to guide the operators as to where it would be appropriate to install the CCTVs. And of course, if the operators have questions, ACTA will be on hand to be able to engage them to address any concerns that they have. Over and above that, operators must also have relevant protocols in place and also share that with parents so that parents know in what kind of situations it will be appropriate to ask for CCTV footages and what they can expect the response from the preschools to be. At the end of the day, while we have set a mandated timeline, we are encouraging operators who are able to do so earlier to do so earlier because we fully recognize the concerns of parents. Thank you.
Ms. Haniso.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must first declare that I'm also a parent of a preschool-going toddler. I have two supplementary questions for MOS soon. The first pertains to AGDA's reduction of the Kinderland's license tenure up to 6 months, and that I understand that AGDA will not hesitate to not renew the license if the centre fails to demonstrate significant improvements. Assuming that in the event the license is not renewed, I understand that the burden will be on the preschool to facilitate and make arrangements for parents to enroll their children to another alternate centres. Under such circumstances, I believe that the relationship will have really soured and there will be a lot of mistrust between the centre operators and the parents. So I therefore hope that AGDA will, under such circumstances, intervene and assist the many helpless parents. The second SQ is in relation to the recent announcements of the mandatory CCTV installations. Following from the announcements, some parents still do raise their concerns and share with me that there may be possibilities where the CCTV footages may be tampered prior to the review of the parents of the affected children, or that there will be situations where the alleged child mismanagement incident actually took place at a blind spot or areas that are not captured by the CCTV. How would AGDA actually ensure that such parents' concerns are properly addressed? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her questions. Please rest assured that AGDA will stand ready to assist parents of affected preschoolers, if they so wish to transfer to another school. Right now, AGDA is already part of the discussions, and I understand that if Kinderland is not able to help parents transfer their children, these parents can write into AGDA, and AGDA will do its best to find placements for these children. On the second point, it will be an offense to tamper with CCTV footage, right? It's the intent to have the CCTV footage to ensure the security, safety of the children, it's very obvious. So if any operator were to tamper with the footage because they want to obscure wrongdoing or to cover up wrongdoing, please rest assured that the authorities will take firm action against such operators. Thank you.
Ms. Yeo Wan Ling.
I note that there has been efforts to recruit mid-careerists and persons who have not worked in childcare services to join this industry, not only as teachers, educators, but as edu-carers and even service staff. What has AGDA put in place in the training and assessment of these new joiners to this industry? And are these training uniformed across all preschools? In the event that there are complaints against these new joiners, what are the steps that AGDA will put in place to ensure that our new joiners are sufficiently protected in the investigation process, given that they could be new and unexperienced on the job?
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her questions. Regardless whether it is a new graduate from one of our local schools joining the sector or a mid-career individual who has decided to join the early childhood sector, there is available pre-service training. There is also continuous professional development courses, in other words, in-job training. And our operators also have obligations to provide orientation programs to induct and socialize new staff on the values, the mission, the expectations, attitudes that staff should have when they join the preschool sector. Operators are also required to conduct ongoing training and provide development opportunities for staff to maintain their knowledge of child-safe policies and also their expected standards of care and appropriate behaviors in relation to children. I had mentioned in my main response that as part of our regular review and the lessons that we will learn from these unfortunate incidents, that ACTA will be working closely with NIEC and other training providers to strengthen training for our educators, whether or not these are new joiners, recent graduates, or these are staff who have converted, moved from another industry into the preschool sector. Thank you.
Mr. Darrell David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of questions for MOS. Before that, I'd like to declare my interest as being on the EXCO of an anchor operator in the early childhood space. First question is, MOS mentioned earlier about protocols regarding the use of CCTV. Could I just have clarity, MOS, whether or not the protocols will be guidelines will be given by EGDA, and then the various operators will be allowed to come up with their protocols following these guidelines, or will EGDA be prescriptive of the guidelines and expect the operators to actually follow those guidelines in detail? Second question I ask is, I understand that perhaps in schools, MOE schools, they also have CCTV that's being used, and I'm assuming that MOE actually will have protocol with regard to when and how such CCTV will be used and accessed when parents come and request for that. Would EGDA consider perhaps consulting or engaging with MOE to find out what the protocols there are and perhaps apply that in their guidelines, be it prescriptive or just general guidelines to the operators in the early childhood space? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his clarifications. I would like to refer members to the media release that was issued by ACTA on the 31st of August 2023. This is regards to the mandatory installation of CCTV cameras in preschools. I have also shared in my main response earlier that ACTA has actually issued guidelines to preschools to be able to guide them, as to where the appropriate places to install the CCTVs, as well as what is the protocol in place for their engagements with parents, should parents wish to view the CCTV footage. Thank you.
There are still many members who have raised their hands. I will come to you, but I'm giving priority to those who filed their questions today and in the order. So, Ms. Mariam Jaffa.
Thank you for the MOS for giving the data on the prevalence of such incidents in childcare. I think 10 per 100,000 and staying at that level is encouraging. However, could I get a sense from the Minister what has been the, ramifications in these 10 odd cases a year in terms of the range of ramifications from the highest penalty of a fine of 5,000 to actions taken on the school teachers, because I think it is important to communicate to the public that not only are there, not only are these incidences low, but that concrete action is taken out of each and every single one of them.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her questions. As I have mentioned in my main reply, the penalties that have been imposed on the operator include a financial penalty of $5,000, and this is the maximum allowed under the current framework. I've also shared that ACTA, arising from this case, will be reviewing the framework to see whether the financial penalty is sufficient. And if need be, we will be looking to raise this financial penalty. This operator has also had its center license reduced to 6 months. Now, this is a very important, serious penalty because it can affect the impressions that parents have towards the preschool. Do they still want to continue sending their child to a preschool whereby their license tenure is only 6 months? At the same time, this operator is a POP operator, and to receive POP funding, they would have to meet various KPIs. And one of them is their center license, and their licensing tenure will also be a key factor when ACTA looks at funding for the operator. At the same time, as the member has mentioned, there are specific actions towards the individuals who have now been charged for ill treatment of children. ACTA has barred one of the educators from ever working in the childcare sector. This individual is now being charged in court for a criminal offence under CYPA for ill treatment of children. So we have to look at it as a whole. There are different levels of penalties, of financial penalty. There are also, directions for the operator, whereby they have to assemble a team of non-affiliated members and provide an independent review, findings and recommendations as to how they can do better to ensure that these incidents do not happen in their centres again. So we need to look at holistically all the penalties and all the actions that ACDA has taken towards the operator. And also there is obviously the courts and the police who are separately investigating the educator. Thank you.
Mr. Melvin Yong.
So I thank the MOS for her answers. I'd like to ask if ACDA is closely monitoring the staffing levels at all our preschools, especially the attrition rate, because I feel that insufficient manpower and high staff attrition can be potential red flags, signaling the poor work environment at our preschool centres.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his questions. ACDA has been working very hard at trying to encourage more well-meaning individuals, dedicated individuals to join the preschool sector. And as I've mentioned in my main response, we have raised salaries. We are trying to improve work conditions. And all these would have to be done in tandem with the support of parents. Because when we reduce childcare service provision hours, cutting back from working on Saturdays, for instance, we also need the agreement and cooperation from parents. So in answer to your question, ACDA is closely monitoring the state of our manpower, women power of the childcare industry to ensure that our early childhood educators are appropriately remunerated, that there is a skills ladder, that they have a work-life balance. And this is continuous work in progress, and we are closely monitoring the status of the childcare sector. Thank you.
Before I call on Dr. Wan Rizal, I just want to let Associate Professor James Lim, Mr. Gerald Giam, Ms. Carrie Tan, and Mr. Don Wee know that I've noted you've raised your hand. I'll come to you later. Dr. Wan Rizal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the MOS for sharing her replies. I share her sentiments too on how our preschool educators have worked really hard, and they were especially instrumental during the COVID-19 period. At the same time, I also understand that, looking after kids in a classroom setting like this with varied abilities does give them a burden, extra burden to them. In that respect, I would like to ask, what is the kind of mental health support do we provide for our preschool educators? Because I understand that for them, with their tight schedules, it's pretty difficult to set up such. But with this incident, perhaps we can move forward and come out with a clear protocol and support that's required for them. Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his concerns on the well-being of our preschool educators. As I have mentioned in my main reply, there are different levels in which we're trying to handle this issue. First and foremost, we must, at the center level, make sure that our educators have an outlet, have a channel to be able to share with their center leaders their concerns with their work commitments and responsibilities, and any difficulties that they may have. And that's why, in my main reply, I have said that operators must do their part and take the lead in supporting the well-being of their educators. But at the same time, we're not leaving it as that. ACDA has launched a good practices guide to guide our operators in implementing best workplace and human resources practices to foster a supportive work environment. And ACDA is also working with the Health Promotion Board and the Workplace Safety and Health Council to offer programs to operators and educators to support their overall well-being. But over and above what ACDA can do and should do, over and above what operators have to do for their educators, I also hope to reach out to parents that in our engagements with preschool educators, to trust that they are doing their best for our children, to work with them closely to ensure that our children are thriving and growing up in a warm, nurturing environment. And let us all remember that teachers who are well cared for can better care for our children. Thank you.
Mr. Gerald Giam.
I'd like to ask my question again because it wasn't fully answered, and I also have one supplementary question. Can ACDA require all preschools to adopt a child protection policy and provide a template to all preschools to customize to their own needs? A child protection policy will articulate the minimum standards laid out in government regulations and may also include additional safeguarding commitments that are tailored to the school's unique circumstances. It will help all stakeholders to live and breathe child safety, as MOS Sun has said just now. And my SQ is the MOS aware that a child protection policy not only protects children, but also protects teachers and schools from unwarranted accusations by parents and teachers, by students and parents, by setting clearer boundaries for all parties in their interactions with each other? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his questions. I would like to reiterate that in my main response, I had talked about the multi-layered safeguards that we have in place, that we have built up over the years in order to ensure child safety. I have with me here 3 sets of documents that govern early childhood development, as well as the various policies that are in place to protect our children. This is the ECDC Act that I mentioned, 65 pages, right? We have the regulations, 66 pages. We have a code of practice. This is in its 2nd edition, 75 pages. All these are policies which we constantly review, which we constantly engage industry and operators on. It is not for a lack of policies. We can have all the policies under the sun in the world, but what is important is how well it is being executed on the ground. So I fully recognize and understand where the member is coming from. We are all on the same page. We want to protect our children as best as possible. And we believe that doing this, that the best way to do this is to have multi-layered safeguards. Therefore, ACDA will look at these policies, rely on these levers to make sure that operators, centers, educators are doing what they should do to ensure child safety. At the same time, operators need to know and truly breathe child safety in their policies and SOPs. And center leaders and educators have to take their responsibilities seriously. On your question as to how we can ensure that not only our students' safety is being taken care of, but also that we have policies in place for our educators. That is precisely why we have mandated CCTV's installation, so that when there is feedback that there are unfortunate incidents in the childcare centres, that we then have evidence to support investigations and be able to give a comprehensive response to parents should they have concerns about their child's safety in preschools. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Tan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recall that the MOS had mentioned that there was a survey done on the use of CCTV by preschools, And may I ask, when was this survey done and how many preschools were involved in the survey? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his question. I believe it was June last year. It definitely was last year, but I cannot remember which month. To the best of my recollection, it was in June last year. But I can come back and clarify that with the member again after I further checked it. Like I mentioned, it was a status check. It was just to get a sense of where the preschools are. So it wasn't a survey that each and every center responded to. So for instance, a AOP might have many centers underneath it, right? Beneath them. So the AOP from their HQ responded as to whether they have CCTVs installed. But like what I mentioned earlier, because CCTV installation was not mandatory at that point in time when we conducted the survey, we did not go down to track and monitor the results or the inputs that they provided through the survey. Thank you.
Ms. Carrie Tan.
Thank you, Speaker. Earlier in her statement, MOS emphasized that AGDA do not currently impose psychological screening on preschool educators. I would like to ask the reason for that. And in line with, I think, our common belief that in such cases, prevention is always going to be better than any kind of penalty or remedial action. Does AGDA see the value of putting in place some form of assessment or screening, if not to every single preschool educator, but at least to the business owners who want to apply for licenses and the principals who are running centers? Because I think the culture of what it means to respect a child is something that needs to come from the leader of centers. And if I agree fully with MOS that the preschool teachers need to live and breathe the values and the beliefs of always protecting and respecting the child. And I think the enforcement route is necessary, but we should not fall back only on the enforcement route to effectively prevent such cases. So my question is also, second question, will AGDA consider putting in a mandatory screening or at least a mindset screening assessment to future or existing current operators and principals to ensure that they are in line with a culture of respect for the child in terms of running their centers and expecting the same of their preschool teachers? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for her question. I fully understand where she's coming from, and I also know that there are many parents out there who are very concerned about their safety of their children. So I had mentioned in my main reply that all educators must be certified by and registered with AGDA before they can be deployed in our preschools. AGDA verifies their professional qualifications. We also conduct background checks, reference checks, and at the end of the day, if there are educators who are assessed to pose a risk to children's safety, then they will not be allowed to enter the preschool sector as an educator. On the specific question of mandatory psychological screening, I would like to say that this is not done in other jurisdictions, and this is not done for other professions. While we fully appreciate the importance placed on child safety, and we are taking a firm stance on child safety by having those pre-employment checks that I mentioned earlier for criminal antecedents, whether they have bad references, and they must be certified fit and appropriate to work for the sector. But I would caution against mandatory psychological screening, because if we take a step back, I think we must also fully recognize that there are individuals, some say that there are many individuals out there who may be struggling with mental health conditions. And actually, their mental health conditions can be well managed with proper advice, medication from their doctors. So I do not think that we should exclude these individuals who have mental health conditions if those mental health conditions are well managed from entering the preschool sector. I would also like to share that currently there is a self-declaration form that potential educators have to fill up. And this self-declaration form requires them to fill in whether or not they have mental health conditions. And if they so declare that they have mental health conditions, then there will be need for a certification by a psychiatrist that they are able to work with young children. So I think that is the balance that we have to put in place to ensure child safety while ensuring that we do not stigmatize mental health conditions in our society. Thank you.
Associate Professor James Lim.
I have two supplementary questions, both pertaining to CCTVs. And I'll begin by acknowledging that the ministry has indicated that they will comply with PDPA stipulations. That said, I think there are distinct concerns when it comes to children. For starters, children are generally unable to grant consent or to withdraw it. And so one is left to wonder how the ministry will finesse this issue of obtaining consent along PDPA guidelines. Similarly, do the guidelines limit access to footage? For example, how long such footage is stored and whether deleted footage is actually verified. My second SQ, it's with regard to the response that the ministry had put up in terms of the press release, and they stated that 100% of early intervention centers had already installed CCTVs. But earlier on, MOS Sun also explained that it was a survey, and hence it was unclear whether we could be certain about the statistics. How then is she so sure that 100% of these early intervention centers indeed had implemented CCTVs?
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his questions. First and foremost, as shared in the media release by ACTA on the 31st of August with regards to the mandatory installation of CCTV cameras, ACTA had shared that parents' access to CCTV footages will only be granted for the purposes of providing an objective reference point to clarify feedback or to assist the investigation of serious incidents within the preschool premise. And the request has to be on reasonable grounds. I understand where the member is coming from as to concerns about the privacy of children, and that is why when viewing the footage, there is actually a requirement for the faces and the faces of the children and the staff who are not part of the investigation and inquiry into the specific instance whereby the parent has given feedback, for the faces of these children and educators to have their faces masked. So this is a requirement. And we will make it very clear to our operators, and that is why we have issued guidelines to the operators, and the operators will also be sharing this with parents, so parents know what are the boundaries around the viewing of footages with regards to the CCTV. On your second question, like I mentioned, the survey was done as a part of various engagements that ACTA did with the preschool operators last year on a variety of issues, of which CCTV installation was one of them. We will have to take the survey responses as they are. I'm very sure the survey respondents know that they would have to provide the feedback to the best of their knowledge, and that they really should not be providing dishonest inputs to a ACTA-conducted survey. But that said, I recognize your concerns that even though some preschools may say that they have CCTVs, but in actual fact they may not, and that is why we have mandated the CCTV installation by the 1st of July. And please rest assured that because it is mandated, there will then be checks as well as monitoring on CCTV installation. Thank you.
We have been at this important matter for over an hour. I'm just going to allow one more PQ so that we can move on to the other PQs. Mr. Donby.
Thank you, Speaker. I have two SQs. Member Zulkarnain and myself have many young residents who are studying at Kinderland Choa Chu Kang. But at the same time, we also have residents who are teaching at the same center. One told me that many preschool teachers are demoralized. What is Ministry's view of certain operators banning mobile phone devices of the preschool teachers in classrooms, and would these discourage whistleblowing? At the same time, does ACDA have a hotline for the preschool teachers to call so that they can whistleblow, or they have a listening ear to turn to? Thank you.
MOS Sun.
I thank the member for his questions. As I have said in my main response earlier, any operator's policy on the use of personal mobile devices at work should not hinder their staff from reporting any wrongdoing in their centres. That said, there can be reasonable, I was going to say reasonable reasons. There can be good reason why educators may need their mobile devices. For instance, they may need to address an emergency that has happened at home. And as I've mentioned, they may need their personal mobile device to record any wrongdoing. And so in these incidents, in such situations, the operator should allow the educator to use their personal mobile device. So while some operators have a policy on the use of personal mobile devices, it has to be a reasonable one. I've also mentioned in my main reply that there are various channels for anyone to report wrongdoing. Members of the public, educators, there are hotlines, email addresses in which any member of the public and educator can report wrongdoing. And these channels do lead to ACDA. So I'd like to assure the member that there are multiple channels of reporting for wrongdoing, and that members of the public, educators, parents, that they can do so, and we would encourage them to do so if they have reasonable concerns about their children's safety. Thank you.